The morning started with the kind of silence that didn't belong in a farmhouse. No clatter of pans, no radio humming from the kitchen, just a sharp scrape of Rex's claws against the wooden floorboards. He wasn't begging for food or attention. He stood stiff at the edge of the breakfast table, hackles up, a low growl vibrating from his chest. His gaze never left the back door. Annie tried to hush him, to smooth his fur, but he snapped at her hand. That's when they all realized he wasn't warning about nothing. Something was already inside. The farmhouse kitchen smelled of yesterday's bacon grease and stale coffee. Annie sat at the table with her hands wrapped around a chipped mug, waiting for the warmth to cut through the chill that seeped in from the walls. Her younger brother, Jacob, was hunched over a bowl of cereal, tapping the spoon against the rim in a slow, absent rhythm. Their father, Tom, still in his work boots, thumbed through a week-old newspaper, lips pressed into a hard line. The only sound not belonging to them came from Rex. The German shepherd's growl had deepened, the kind that seemed to start low in the earth and push up through his chest. His ears stood stiff, his tail frozen. His body faced the back door, but his eyes, those sharp amber eyes, tracked something unseen, something that felt close. "Rex," Annie whispered, reaching down to brush her fingers along his collar. "Hush, boy. It's just the wind." The dog jerked away from her touch and snapped, not viciously, but sharp enough to make her flinch. The cereal spoon clattered against Jacob's bowl. "Christ," Tom muttered, folding the paper and setting it down. "That dog's going to scare the life out of us one of these days. Probably just a raccoon outside." "No," Jacob said softly, eyes on the dog. His voice carried a conviction that made both Annie and Tom look at him. "He doesn't growl like that at raccoons." The words hung in the kitchen. Tom cleared his throat and forced a chuckle, but the laugh never reached his eyes. "Dog hears a lot we don't," he said, pushing his chair back. "I'll check the yard." "Probably nothing." He pulled his jacket off the hook by the door and grabbed the shotgun leaning in the corner. The metallic click of the shells sliding into place made Annie's stomach twist. She'd grown up with the sound. Farm life meant guns were as common as hammers, but something about the way her father loaded it now felt different, heavier. Tom opened the back door. Cold morning air spilled inside, carrying the sharp scent of damp earth and wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney a mile off. Rex surged forward, but Tom blocked it with his boot. "Stay," Tom ordered, voice firm. The dog trembled but obeyed. The three of them waited in the kitchen, silence stretching, every creak of the old farmhouse sounding like a footstep. Annie strained to hear anything from the yard. Her father's boots on the porch, the crunch of gravel, but nothing came, just the wind against the eaves. Then, a long moment later, the floorboards groaned. Tom stepped back inside, shotgun lowered. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. "Yard's clear," he said, but his voice was too casual, too practiced. Annie noticed his left hand tightening on the shotgun stock even as he said it against the wall. Rex didn't relax. If anything, his growl deepened, vibrating through the floor. His body stayed fixed on the back door as though he hadn't seen Tom come back at all. Jacob pushed the cereal away. "What if it's not outside?" "Don't start," Tom snapped, more harshly than necessary. The boy shrank back in his chair. Annie's pulse thudded in her throat. The attic door at the top of the narrow stairwell shuddered once, as if someone leaned against it, then fell still. Annie, Jacob, and Tom froze in place. Rex barked furiously, straining toward the stairs, his claws digging grooves into the wood. "Jesus," Tom muttered, face pale beneath his stubble. He tightened his grip on the axe handle, knuckles white. "Stay here." "Dad, no." Annie whispered, stepping forward. Her voice cracked, part plea, part warning. "You heard that. There's someone up there." Tom's eyes flicked toward her, hard and unyielding. "And this is my house, my responsibility." He started up the stairs, the weight of his boots making the wood groan. Annie felt her breath lock in her throat. She grabbed Jacob's arm, holding him back even though every nerve screamed to her to follow. The attic door creaked again. Tom stopped halfway up, axe raised. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by Rex's guttural snarls. Then Tom did something that made Annie's skin crawl. He lowered the axe slightly and exhaled, almost as if in resignation. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Not the bark of a man chasing intruders. It sounded like recognition, like he already knew. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. No voice answered, but something scuffled faintly on the other side of the door. Tom tightened his jaw. Then, with a sharp motion, he descended the stairs. "It's nothing," he said, too quickly. "Nothing but rats." Annie stared at him. "Don't lie to us." "I said it's nothing." His shout ricocheted through the house, and Jacob flinched. Annie felt the truth of her suspicions sink like ice. Tom knew more than he was admitting. The rest of the day bled out in tense silence. Tom busied himself with chores that didn't need doing. Mending a fence that wasn't broken. Stacking firewood till the pile already towered waist-high. Annie tried to keep Jacob distracted with small tasks, but his eyes kept drifting to the ceiling, to the shadowed corners of the farmhouse. Rex remained on edge, pacing the hallways, ears pricked, nose twitching as if tracking a scent. Every so often, he'd pause and let out a low growl aimed at the ceiling. As dusk fell, the house seemed to grow smaller, darker, as though the walls themselves leaned inward. The wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Annie lit a lamp in the kitchen, its glow a fragile shield against the gathering dark. Tom came in, dirt streaked across his shirt, his face drawn. He set the axe by the door again, but this time Annie noticed he didn't touch the shotgun, almost like he didn't want to fire it. They ate dinner in silence, the scrape of cutlery too loud in the stillness. Halfway through, a sound drifted down from the attic. Not a shuffle this time, but something unmistakable. The faint thud of a footstep, followed by another. Jacob's fork clattered against his plate. Annie's stomach lurched. Tom kept eating, slowly, deliberately, as though nothing had happened. "Dad," Annie whispered, her voice trembling. "We can't ignore it anymore. Someone's up there." Tom looked up, his eyes hollow. "You think I don't know that?" The admission hit her like a slap. Jacob's mouth fell open. Rex barked sharply, as though affirming the truth. Annie leaned forward, voice fierce. "Then why are you keeping us here? Why aren't we in town calling the sheriff?" Tom slammed his fist on the table, rattling the dishes. "Because it's not that simple." His voice cracked with something raw, something almost desperate. "What's up there? It's not for outsiders. It's family business." Annie recoiled, heart pounding. "Family business?" The words twisted in her gut. Jacob whispered, "What do you mean, Dad?" But Tom didn't answer. He stood abruptly, chair scraping, and stormed from the kitchen. They heard his boots stomping across the floorboards, the back door slamming open, then shut. Later that night, Annie found Jacob sitting cross-legged on the living room rug. Rex pressed close beside him. The boy's face was pale, his eyes wide. "Annie," he whispered, "what if it's Mom?" The words sucked the air from her lungs. Their mother had vanished nearly 2 years ago, one morning without explanation. No note, no farewell, no trace. Tom had told them she'd left, said some people weren't meant to stay. Annie had never believed him. Not fully. "No," Annie whispered back, though her voice shook. "That's not possible." But her mind betrayed her, spinning images she couldn't stop. Their mother's voice drifting from the attic, her footsteps on the boards, her shadow moving in the dark. Rex suddenly stiffened, ears twitching. A low growl rumbled from his throat. He bolted for the stairs before Annie could stop him. His claws clattered as he bounded up, barking furiously at the attic door. "Rex!" Jacob called, jumping to his feet. Annie grabbed his arm. "Don't," she started, but it was too late. The attic door groaned, and then a sound tore through the farmhouse. A scream. Not loud, not shrill. Muffled, as if someone's mouth was bound. Annie's blood froze. Jacob's face drained of color. Rex barked wildly, throwing himself against the door. Annie clutched Jacob's shoulders. "Did you hear that?" He nodded, trembling. It was a woman. Tom didn't return until long past midnight. When he walked in, his face was haggard, eyes bloodshot. Annie stood waiting, arms folded. "You lied to us," she said, voice flat, shaking with rage. "There's someone up there." A woman. We heard her scream. Jacob stood behind her, silent but unyielding. Rex growled low at Tom, as though sharing their accusation. For a long moment, Tom just stared. Then he sank into a chair, shoulders slumping, as if the weight of everything had finally crushed him. "It's your mother," he said. The words hit like a hammer. Jacob gasped. Annie's legs nearly gave out. "What?" she whispered. "She came back," Tom said, his voice heavy with something that sounded like shame. "Months ago. But she wasn't right. She wasn't herself. Wouldn't speak sense. Wouldn't eat unless I forced her. Kept saying someone was watching. Someone was coming. I didn't know what to do. So I kept her up there, where she couldn't hurt herself. Or us." Annie staggered back, horror crawling through her veins. "You locked her in the attic?" Tom's eyes flashed. "You think I wanted this? You think I don't wake every night hearing her whisper? I did it to protect us, to keep this house together. If the town found out, they'd take everything." Jacob's voice broke. "You should have told us." Tom's jaw clenched. "And what would that do? Fill your heads with nightmares? You think either of you could have carried this?" Annie's fury trembled in her hands. "You don't get to decide that. She's our mother. We deserve to know." A silence followed, jagged and heavy. Rex barked once, sharp and demanding, as if urging him to act. The next morning, Tom was gone again. Into the woods this time, he claimed, though Annie no longer believed anything he said. She and Jacob sat in the kitchen, faces pale in the morning light. "We have to see her," Jacob whispered. Annie hesitated, her heart hammering. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to run into town and call for help. But the thought of their mother, alone, bound, terrified above them, was unbearable. She nodded. "Tonight, when Dad's asleep." That night, the farmhouse felt like a coffin. Shadows clung to corners, the air thick with dust and silence. Annie waited until Tom's snores drifted from his room, deep and steady. Then she motioned to Jacob. Together, with Rex padding close, they climbed the stairs. Annie's hands shook as she reached for the attic latch. The metal was cold beneath her fingers. She pushed. The door creaked open, releasing a wave of stale air, thick with sweat and something sour, almost metallic. Jacob gagged softly. Rex growled, hackles raised. Annie lifted the lantern. Its glow pushed back the shadows inch by inch. At first, all she saw were old boxes, dust-slicked trunks, forgotten furniture draped in yellowed sheets. Then, in the far corner, movement. A figure crouched low, trembling, hair matted, clothes torn and filthy. The face turned toward the light, pale, hollow-eyed, lips cracked. Their mother. Jacob gasped, "Mom." But her eyes didn't light with recognition. They flicked wildly between the children, the lantern, the door, as if calculating escape. "Shut it!" she rasped, voice broken, unfamiliar. "Shut the door. He'll hear you." Annie's throat closed. "Who?" she whispered. Their mother crawled closer, each movement jerky, animal-like. Her eyes locked on Rex, and for a heartbeat they sharpened, full of terror. "Not your father," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Someone else. He's already here." The lantern trembled in Annie's hand. Jacob gripped her arm tight. Rex barked once, violently, at the darkened corner of the attic beyond their mother. Annie swung the light. Something moved there, something tall, retreating deeper into the shadows. They weren't alone. The lantern flame flickered as Annie swung it toward the far corner. For an instant, the shadows seemed solid, shifting, pulling back, until they swallowed whatever shape had been there. The air in the attic thickened, heavy with the stench of sweat and rot. Rex lunged forward, snarling, his body low, every muscle coiled. Annie's heart hammered so violently she thought it might crack her ribs. "Who's here?" she whispered, though her throat was dry, her voice barely a sound. Her mother's cracked lips trembled. "Don't look. Don't let him know you see." Jacob clutched Annie's arm. His whisper was ragged. "Annie, there's someone." A floorboard snapped sharply from the darkness. Heavy, human, Rex launched. His bark shattered the attic stillness, echoing like gunfire. Annie spun, lantern jerking wildly. For a heartbeat, she saw it. A man's silhouette, gaunt but tall, pressed against the far wall. His face caught only a sliver of light. Pale skin stretched too tight. Eyes sunken, teeth bared in something between a grin and a grimace. Then he vanished into the shadowed rafters, slipping behind old furniture. "Get out," their mother hissed. "Now." Before he... The floor groaned. The man was circling. Annie grabbed Jacob's hand and yanked him toward the stairs. "Go!" Rex stayed behind, snapping at the dark. The lantern flame guttered as Annie pulled Jacob down. The attic door banging shut behind them. They tumbled into the hallway. Gasping, "Dad!" Jacob stammered, "We need..." A voice cut him off. "Need me for what?" Tom stood at the end of the hall, his shadow long and cold in the lamplight. The shotgun was in his hands now. His eyes flicked to the attic door, then to Annie and Jacob. "You went up there." It wasn't a question. Annie's breath caught. You knew there was someone else up there with her." Tom's jaw tightened. "He's not someone else. He's blood." Downstairs, the farmhouse seemed to hum with silence, like the walls themselves were listening. Tom herded them toward the kitchen with the shotgun, his face hard, carved by exhaustion and something darker. "Sit," he ordered. Annie's legs trembled as she pulled Jacob into a chair. Rex finally rejoined them, lips curled, eyes locked on Tom. Tom leaned the shotgun against the table, but close enough to reach in a heartbeat. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, hands shaking only slightly. "You want the truth?" he asked. "Fine. You'll have it." He sank into the chair opposite them, the weight of his presence filling the room. "That man up there, that's your uncle. My brother." Annie's chest tightened. She barely remembered her Uncle Mark, fleeting childhood images of a lean figure at Christmas, laughter tinged with cruelty, arguments that left their mother crying. He'd disappeared when Annie was 8, whispered to have run off after some trouble with the law. "You told us he was dead," and he whispered. Tom's eyes flickered. Might as well have been. When he came back, he wasn't the same. Prison made him something else. Something broken. He showed up here a year after your mother disappeared. Begged for shelter. Swore he'd change. His hand tightened on the glass. But he didn't. He wanted things. Money, food, drink. And when I wouldn't give enough, he took. I caught him sneaking into your rooms at night. Jacob paled, clutching Annie's hand. So I locked him away. Same as your mother. Better to keep him where he couldn't hurt anyone. Annie's stomach churned. And Mom? Why lock her away? Tom's eyes dropped, shame bleeding into his features. Because she tried to free him. Said he was sick, not evil. She wouldn't stop. Night after night. She'd go to that attic, whisper to him, cry for him. I couldn't let her tear this family apart. So I put her with him. The room tilted, nausea rising hot in Annie's throat. "You monster," she whispered. Tom slammed his glass on the table, whiskey spilling. "You think I wanted this? You think I don't carry it every damn day? I did what I had to do to keep us alive, to keep you safe." But Rex barked sharply, as if calling out the lie. The sound from above returned, a slow, dragging shuffle across the attic floor. Then a thud, deliberate like a warning. Tom grabbed a shotgun. His face had gone pale again, sheen of sweat on his brow. "He's awake now," Tom muttered. "He'll try something." Annie rose, trembling but fierce. "We can't stay here. We need the sheriff. Both of them, Mom and Mark, need help." Tom's jaw set like iron. "No sheriff. No outsiders. If the law comes, they'll take the farm. They'll take everything." And in that instant, Annie understood. The farm mattered more to him than they did. "Dad," Jacob whispered, eyes filling, "you lied about Mom. You lied about everything." Tom's face twisted. "I kept us together." "No," Annie said, her voice steady despite the quake inside her. "You broke us." The next hours blurred into dread. Tom sat in the kitchen, shotgun across his lap, daring either child to move. Annie and Jacob whispered when they could, planning, hearts pounding with each step overhead. Close to dawn, it happened. The attic door slammed open. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. 2 sets. Their mother, wild-eyed, filthy, and behind her, Mark. Gaunt, taller than Tom, his face a skull with living eyes. Rex leapt forward, teeth bared. Mark swung a rusted crowbar, but Rex dodged, snapping its arm. "Stop!" Annie screamed, rushing to her mother. She caught her as the woman stumbled, bones sharp beneath her skin. Her mother clutched her face, whispering, "Get out. Take Jacob. Don't look back." Tom leveled the shotgun. For a moment, everything froze. The family splintered across the kitchen, shadows shifting with the dawn light. Then Tom fired. The blast shook the walls. Mark staggered but didn't fall. He snarled, teeth red, and lunged. Rex met him mid-charge, jaws clamping onto his arm. The two went crashing into the table, splintering wood, dishes flying. Tom fired again. This time Mark dropped, blood blooming across the floorboards. Rex limped back, whining, for matted red. Jacob screamed, burying his face against Annie. Their mother collapsed beside them, sobbing. Tom stood panting, shotgun shaking in his hands. His face was ashen, eyes hollow. "See," he whispered hoarsely. "I kept us safe." Annie's fury boiled over. "Safe? You call this safe?" She pointed the blood, to their broken mother, to Rex whimpering on the floor. "You've destroyed us." For the first time, Tom's face cracked. He dropped the shotgun, falling to his knees. His shoulders shook, a sound escaping him. Not rage this time, but a broken sob. When the sheriff's car finally pulled into the drive that morning, the sun weak over the fields, Annie was the one who had called. Her voice had trembled on the phone, but the words had been steady. Come. Bring help. Bring everything. Tom didn't resist when they cuffed him. He didn't even look at Annie or Jacob, only at the earth beneath his boots, as if the soil itself had betrayed him. Their mother was taken away in an ambulance, wrapped in blankets, her hand clutching Jacob's until the last possible second. Mark's body lay still under a white sheet. The farmhouse felt emptier than ever, though the air was no longer thick with secrets. That night, Annie sat on the porch steps, Jacob curled asleep against her shoulder. Rex lay at her feet, bandaged with breathing, eyes half closed yet watchful. The wind carried the smell of cut grass and damp earth. The silence was different now, not heavy, not suffocating, just quiet. Annie stroked Rex's fur, her voice barely above a whisper. "You knew all along, didn't you, boy? You were trying to warn us." His tail thumped weakly against the boards, as if an answer. Annie looked out at the fields stretching endless in the dusk. For the first time in years, she let herself cry, not in fear, but in grief, for the mother they'd lost and found again, for the father who had broken under his own choices, for the brother she barely remembered but would never forget. The house behind her groaned with age, but it no longer felt like it was hiding anything. Only echoes remained, and in those echoes, Annie swore she heard her mother's voice, faint, fragile, but free.